No, look, I'd be careful to view this event in its context, which is very much, it's an anti-dumping investigation that China initiated against Australian barley exports several years ago. It is concerning. They yet to finalise their decision, and will certainly be making representations to the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, making our case. But I think it's a trade dispute, but it's quite a narrow sector of trade, and it relates to events that are from several years ago now.
The timing is interesting, though, isn't it?
Well, look, I mean, people could make that connection. I think I'd be very reluctant to do so. I mean, we've taken anti-dumping investigations against China successfully in the WTO and elsewhere. They're within their rights to initiate these investigations against us. And look, this is how the world trade system is meant to work. Countries, initiate these investigations. They're tested. They're arbitrated. They can be taken to the WTO. So I think this is about Australian barley. It's concerning for that sector, and certainly we'll be advocating very strongly for them. But I wouldn't seek to, apply an interpretation on that's not warranted.
When you say advocating strongly for them, that it dovetails into Simon Birmingham's argument yesterday that if need be, they'll take it to the World Trade Organisation.
Look, yeah, my understanding is we're keeping all our options open. Countries are allowed to, impose countervailing duties if there is proven dumping, but we can certainly contest that finding. It's our view, and it's the exporters' view that we haven't been dumping, obviously, on China. We don't engage in that sort of a practice. So certainly I think all our options will be on the table in contesting this.
OK, just on to the economy, Dave, there's some pretty dire budget forecasts that have been outlined by Deloitte Access Economics. Is it worse than you might have thought, or is it about what was expected?
Look, I think there's a couple of points to make here. One, we've delivered one of the largest fiscal stimuluses, amongst G20 economies, about 16.9% of GDP. So of course that's going to have an impact on the budget. But the main purpose here was not about preserving the budget; it was about preserving the economy. And I think certainly the Australian economy is going through some tough times. But if you look around the rest of the world, I think we're doing relatively well, and we. By having got control of the health aspects of this crisis sooner than many other countries, and by acting quickly on the economy, I think we'll find in the longer term we're better off as a result. So, look, of course, these figures are large, but if you look around the world, unemployment in the US hit 15% on Friday. The Treasury Secretary is saying it's more likely to be closer to 25%. In Australia, we expect unemployment to reach about 10% in the quarter, but some of the economic signs that we're seeing, even just as of today, are encouraging. I think consumer spending's only down about 7% year on year last week, for instance. The level of bank stress or indebtedness stress is lower than one might expect. So I think it shows you that the measures we've taken have had the impact that they're intended to have, and will come out of this stronger as a result.
Given that some businesses are now reopening early, is it reasonable to suggest that JobKeeper should now be wound back?
Well, I'd say, JobKeeper has been an enormous lifeline to a large number of businesses. There's about, 4.7 million working Australians that are benefiting from JobKeeper. And I know from businesses in my own electorate in Wentworth that have been kept afloat and been able to keep staff on because of JobKeeper. So it's been a tremendously supportive initiative. Now, look, the test there is that, if a business has had a 30% turnover, if it's under a 30% drop in revenue, if it's under a certain size, and 50% if it's over a certain size, those tests will continue to apply. When we legislated JobKeeper, we legislated it for 6 months initially. So, of course, it's not a permanent program. It's designed to get us through this crisis. And we'll be looking at it closer to that time, I think, about, whether there is a continuing need for this. That's just a prudent thing with any program like this, which is temporary in nature. Yeah,
and it would be phased out or just cut off?
Well, I think we have to see how the economy is tracking at the time. Look, this program has really, the first JobKeeper payments only started to flow last week. We're talking about a program that's going for 6 months. The economy has obviously changed dramatically just in the last 2 to 3 months in the forecast and the outlook. So I think it'd be a little precipitate to talk about what we might be doing with it in 6 months' time. I think let's see where we are closer to that date and how we would adjust.
Is it an imperfect system? There's some reports this morning that suggest that it's created what are known as zombie companies. Is it flawed?
Look, I think any program that you put together of this size, of this scale, and with this shorter time period is going to have imperfections. I mean, and I think, I'm sure we've already found a couple in JobKeeper that we've been amending and whatnot as we go. But look, it's not perfect, but it's been a pretty good band-aid, I think, on the economy, or really addressing, I think, to staunch some of the economic suffering. So, look, I think these would be issues that we need to grapple with. I mean, you have issues about, certain workers not being eligible. Well, they're eligible for JobSeeker. Certain businesses that find it hard to prove the turnover loss because they've been a very high growth business over the past 12 months. These are all issues we're working through, and the Commissioner of Taxation is working through business by business. But I think, it's a little too early to be saying that, companies are zombie companies. I mean, we've only been in this economic contraction for sort of 4 to 6 weeks, really. And we need to see what the economic landscape looks like, what the social distancing landscape looks like, what the health landscape looks like, before we can start making a decision about whether businesses are viable or not.
Yeah.